it is a huge day where legalities and policing are concerned in New York. We say that because we also have been bringing you this hour and even before that breaking news that Luigi Mangione is now in New York, that state where prosecutors say he gunned down the UnitedHealthcare CEO. Mangione now faces federal charges. Those charges on the federal level include murder and stalking and weapons charges. On top of those 11 state charges in New York. New York officials said he will be arraigned today. And among those escorting Mangione as soon as he landed in Manhattan is none other than New York City Mayor Eric Adams, who spoke on the case just moments ago.
I want to send a very clear message that this act of terrorism and the violence that stems from it is something that will not be tolerated in the city. We wanted to personally be here to show the symbolism of leading from the front. That mentioned some of these detectives will finally sleep tonight after this person has been brought to justice here in New York City.
All right, we apologize. Kind of hard to hear what he's saying, but let's bring in CBS News legal contributor Jessica Levinson. Jessica, I want to talk about the new federal murder, stalking, and weapons charges. What's the decision making here for the feds?
Well, the decision making here is, number one, that they have jurisdiction. Reed, as you know, when it comes to federal charges, you need some sort of hook, meaning you need to show that there was either wire fraud, that there was the crossing of interstate lines. And we have that, it looks like, in the Mangione case, where he did, in fact, cross state lines. It looks like part of his crossing of state lines was in the premeditation of committing this crime. When it comes to the stalking charges, I think what we're looking at is the evidence that was apparently uncovered with respect to his notebook, that this was somebody who he allegedly, the United CEO, was targeting, was lying in wait. I think we're going to hear that term more. But when it comes to adding the stalking charge, adding the federal murder charge, which again is only available here because of the crossing of state lines, we're in a situation where you could potentially see federal prosecutors decide to charge the death penalty. Again, I don't know if that is what they ultimately will do, but that, based on the charging documents, is a possibility here.
So how soon can we expect to see Mangione in front of that New York judge?
Quickly. And of course, this is more than just one New York judge. You asked me about the federal charges. The federal charges will be brought parallel with the state charges. So we know that there are also state charges. The state charge includes a terrorism charge, which is not typical for a single killing, but would also allow this particular case to be brought from, for instance, a second-degree murder to a first-degree murder, where obviously the potential penalties are higher. So what you see, which is really interesting, the statement from the prosecutors is that these two cases will be moving in parallel. And I think in both cases, what you see is the addition of charges allowing the main charge, the murder charge, to be taken even more seriously. So all of which is, you asked me, when could we see him in front of a New York judge? There will be a state judge and a federal judge, and this will in part be based on a conversation that the federal prosecutors and the state prosecutors will have about who goes first. But we're talking days here.
All right, Jessica, stay with me because we want to let our viewers hear what we just got from DA Alvin Bragg. Let's listen to that and then talk about it.
We will get to your questions on this important matter, which is obviously why we're here. Some of us were here earlier this week for People versus Luigi Mangione, and wanted to give a brief update on that, as I know we've gotten some questions from some of you. Just for context, as we allege, the defendant in that case brazenly shot Mr. Thompson twice in Midtown Manhattan. It was targeted, premeditated, and meant to sow terror. Accordingly, we charged him here in Manhattan earlier this week with murder in the first degree, among additional charges, which carry the maximum sentence of life without parole. This morning, the defendant waived extradition in Pennsylvania and was picked up and is in the process of being transported by the NYPD here to New York. I'll let the Southern District of New York speak for itself about their plans. But I do want to note that speaking generally, we've had state prosecutions and federal prosecutions proceed as parallel matters, and we're in conversations with our law enforcement counterparts.
All right, so your reaction to what you just heard, Jessica?
Really emphasizing our conversation here. One, which is that the state charges are as serious as they can be, that this includes a first-degree murder charge. He alluded to why he included the terrorism charge. And number two, that he is going to be working hand in glove with the federal prosecutors. Again, those charges, obviously the state and federal charges, all based on the same set of facts, but different charges because different levels of government. And I think what we can expect and what we hear from him is not just cooperation, but potentially what often happens in situations like this is the state government allowing the federal government to take the lead. And that's when we will know more about scheduling, which is it will be based on the federal case. And then we can kind of back into the scheduling orders in the state case.
Luigi Mangione's defense attorney has a long and storied history, no slouch, to borrow the terms of my grandma. She would say, long and storied history, no slouch. So are we getting any sense that his attorneys are going to start shooting holes in the process? Because in the face of overwhelming evidence, Jessica, we know this, they start to hit process and the admission of evidence. Are you starting to see early indications of that strategy for the defense?
Really, really smart question. I think that the defense will be a couple of things. And let's, emphasize something, Reed, that you and I have talked about, which is regardless of the caliber of the attorney, there isn't always a fantastic defense. There is a lot of evidence here. I think there could be a potential defense of not it. I know you found a lot of evidence linking Mangione to the crime, but do you have that, forgive the expression, smoking gun? I think that there will absolutely, as you indicated, be a lot of fighting about which evidence will be included in a potential trial because, as you said, the evidence not good for Mangione. If his defense attorneys can somehow say there was a problem with the processing of the evidence, if the evidence is not credible, if the evidence is something that for a variety of different reasons the jury cannot believe or cannot rely on, that would obviously be a big win for the defense. And then I think we also need to look at potentially, not probably, but potentially defenses along the lines of his mental state. Now, again, plenty of evidence to indicate that he was able to form the ability to premeditate, but you could see some arguments about whether or not his mental state should be a mitigating factor here.
Well, we do see him in those courtroom sketches in chains, just like we saw him get on that helicopter in chains. This story sure to spark many conversations with us, and it's always a great pleasure to talk to you. Jessica Levinson, thank you so much.